Recorded live from the secret underground lair of Crimson Cowl Comics and Collectibles, this is the Crimson Cowl Comic Club Podcast.
The following issues may contain spoilers. The pizza delivery guy won't take gold nuggets. I'm Anthony.
And I'm Dr. Kurt's dad. Boy, we're a small group today.
Yeah, we already finished the whole introduction. Welcome to issue number 346 of the Crimson Cowl Comic Club podcast. Every time we record, we talk about comic books. On this week's show, we're going to talk about weekly reviews. That's where we go back and forth and talk about the books that we've been reading. Whether they're new, whether they're old, we're going to talk about them there. And then we're going to jump into the letters page. I think it'll be maybe once a month we will dive into the letters page. Then we're going to ask each other a question, the same question, and answer it. I have to reword my intro because I'm not addressing the crowd around us here. So this episode's question is going to be: if you were on a deserted island and could only bring one comic book or comic book collection with you, what would it be? So the classic question of the desert island type of scenario. We'll answer that question after the weekly reviews to give everyone here time to think about their answer, and maybe those listening and watching at home too, even though we won't hear your responses. But hey, you can reply in the comments on YouTube and or on the Facebook post or wherever you find us and let us know your answer. Okay, so that is going to be set up for the show, weekly reviews and letters pages, so let's dive right into it with the weekly reviews. First up for me is an independent superhero action comedy series called Intermezzo. This is a black and white comic book that is created by Brian Wingrove and edited by Wendy Wingrove. This is a book that I came to know from Brian being a guest on the Cartoonist by Night show that I host, the drawing show that's over on YouTube. And we learned all about his comic book creations and his art journey. And one of the books that he talked about was Intermezzo, and I picked up an issue of that to give it a read. I don't have any kind of normal like synopsis, so this will be kind of just me kind of going off the cuff here. I think there are 18 issues out there at the moment. This one, I think, was printed back in 2006. So this is something he's just been doing. It's a one-man creation as far as the story and the art goes from Brian. Essentially, based off of this first issue, is dealing with jumping into this world of superheroes with a very comedic lens. It's done in a very realistic manner as far as the style of the art. Brian does a lot of cartoony artwork, which I'll just show off later. But this book actually focuses on more traditional likenesses and realism when it comes to the design of the books. But it is 100% focused on comedy because right off the bat, we meet a group of heroes, and then halfway through the book, a group of villains. And it's very interesting where these characters are, where we find these characters as a brand new reader. I'll just read the opening page for each of the segments. So for the hero, it says, "Civilization is a wondrous city protected by many great heroes such as the Cavalry and the Powerhouse. This story has nothing to do with them. Our story starts as 5 rookie heroes arrive for the weekly meeting." So the whole point of this book is the fact that these 5 superheroes are all meeting up in an apartment to have a superhero meeting. And most of this dialogue, they're in costumes, they're bringing out hors d'oeuvres, they're thinking about ordering pizza, they're waiting on to see if somebody is late and who's going to show up to the meeting. And it's all very comical, and it's a very interesting way to meet so many new characters right off the bat in a way that there's zero superhero fighting and punching. And the best thing I can relate it to is that anytime somebody would ask Kevin Smith about like, hey, you should be directing these big Marvel and DC movies, he's like, nobody wants to make those because I don't really care about all the fighting and all that kind of stuff. That's that's not his kind of filmmaking. He's like, I just like dialogue. It would just be 2 hours of the superheroes talking in a car. And essentially that is what you get with Intermezzo. Like that's the first kind of thing that I thought of, because it's just them sitting and talking, and highly entertaining and very funny, even though you're meeting these for the first time. We jump over to the supervillains. So the intro for their pages is in the rough section of Electricity, called Homicide Heights, another meeting is waiting to begin, but these participants have a more sinister agenda that's double spaced with footnotes and full color pie charts. So now we dive into another meeting, but now from the supervillains. And what's interesting is that most of them are not in costume, and they're talking about whether or not they should be wearing costumes. And they actually make a note in here. There's a line of dialogue where it goes, "You know why so many supervillains get caught? Because they sit around their living rooms in costumes. That's why." And so that was his dialogue. So it's funny to see all the superheroes in costumes, all the villains not in costume, and having a very similar meeting. They don't even really get down to the meeting for the most part, because it's just dealing with who's showing up and what are they eating. And I think pizza's mentioned in this too, from the villain side point too. So yeah, it's very funny. And then, kind of like a third act in a way, we jump into another group of I believe these are all heroes here, but another section, another city. In simplicity, if you will, superheroes are not commonplace. Before they heard that evil genius Inventor may be hiding out in their area, these heroes' biggest challenge was deciding on a team name, and they're still arguing over that. So now you have them in their superhero costumes, a different group, and kind of what I mentioned with the Kevin Smith thing. They're just stuck in traffic. They're sitting in the car, and they're still arguing about what they're going to call themselves. And that's what the whole thing is, until we do get a little action at the end of the issue. So this series has been around since '06. There are 18 issues. It's self-published. It's sold just through email and Comic Cons. There's nothing really to spoil here, but we do get a little action at the end of this book to kind of see that what's going to happen with these characters. But really, the meat of this book is to see the dynamic between all of these new people and the comedy that is thrown in there. And there's nothing that's like too far-fetched as far as their dialogue back and forth. It really does stick to realism. It's not just like being fourth wall breaky or zany or cartoony. Brian works on other cartoon. He has another cartoony type of comic book where he kind of, gets to stretch that muscle of the cartooniness and stuff. But yeah, this was very funny for somebody who is in the middle of rereading all the Tick comics. This was a perfect time to find something like this, because it's rooted in comedy, it's rooted in outlandish personas, and what makes it even better is just it's all stuff that is created by somebody who's just making art for themselves, and they don't even have a website for it. I'll give the promotion for their Instagram in case anyone wants to reach out and just order these through email or Instagram. But yeah, so it makes it extra special because it's somebody who's just making comics for the sake of making comics.
Comics, yep.
And he's got a really good message. I won't go into detail on the inside of it, but just talking about why he's doing this and what drives him to do it, and the fact that a big thank you for anybody who's just picking up this book, because it feeds into his addiction of wanting to make a comic book and getting it out there. So yeah, Brian Wingrove, Intermezzo, 18 issues. I just bought one issue of this one and a couple of the other one, but now I'll need to email him back and definitely scoop up some more. And once again, even though we talked about him on Cartoonist by Night, you can find that episode with Brian Wingrove over on YouTube. For the YouTube audience for Crimson Cowl, I bought some original artwork from him. Gonzo is the Ghost Rider. I've got some G.I. Joe as and Beetle Bailey character mashups. I've got Wilma mashed up with Red Sonja, and then Groundskeeper Willie from The Simpsons mashed up with Terrax from the Marvel Cosmic comics. So yeah, that kind of shows, his cartoony style and stuff, but it also shows the strength of how, he can dabble in realism too, as when it comes to designs and everything. So
Great.
so Brian Wingrove, if people want to reach out and purchase his books, to make sure I'm giving you the correct address, I am fact checking it as I am setting it up so I don't mislead anybody. So his name is
Yeah, don't do
Brian. Yes.
that.
Since you can only get it through this means, it's very important to find the right person. It's Brian with an I, and it's Wingrove as in WIN Grove, so Wingrove, and his address is Brian Wingrove dot as in HUH. That's his Instagram handle is Brian Wingrove dot and then if you just type in Brian Wingrove cartoons or something that shows up, he's got a page on Facebook where you can just see all of his work. But yeah, so you can reach out to him if anyone's interested, and it's just going directly to the person who just has been hand selling these things for 20 years now, according to this comic book. So yeah, I need to get out there and send yet another order to him to get some more Intermezzo. That is from Brian Wingrove.
Right.
And his studio, it's Bare Butt Comics. So this is a bare butt comic. Okay, jumping over to you, Dr. Kurtzstad. What you got for us?
You always do such great wide-ranging comics that everybody and I picked these kind of niche
Sure. Hey.
oddball comics. Last time I talked about the fact that in 1967 we had The Prisoner on television, a British person with lots of secrets is kidnapped and taken away to the village, where they expose him to all kinds of psychological tortures and approaches to try to get him to spill his information. They make him a number 6, but he refuses throughout the show to give in to being molded by the people around him. He exerts his individuality. 1972, Marvel had green-lighted doing a comic version of the show. They ended up shutting it down before it ever got started. And it had great people working on it, Jack Kirby and lots of other people, and it never got off. But finally, in 1982, DC Comics did a 4-issue comic arc of The Prisoner.
Okay.
Now, this is not the show. What this is at a later time period. And in fact, Titan Comics picked it up and put it into a single
paperback.
What it is what they unravel is that the village, this place that is mysterious and nobody was shut down by the UN 10 years after it started. And everybody was evacuated from the island except for number 6. No one ever found number 6 on the island. So now within the government back in Britain, there are people who want to find the island because nobody's quite sure where the village is. And you're not even sure really it's an island, but the village is there somewhere. And so they're trying to find the village and find out what's going on. But the comic begins with 2 spies who are kind of arguing. They've been working together as spies, but the one is leaving now the department, and the other one's staying on and trying to talk her into staying, even though their last mission turned out to be a botched mission, and there's lots of pressure on both of them. She says no, she's not staying. She is going on a round-the-world tour on a yacht, so she's taking off to do that. He's staying back. They have a daughter together. They were married. They have a daughter together. So she ends up crashing her boat during a storm on the village, which is now a wreck. The buildings are all broken down and everything else. And who does she run into? Number 6. The only one left in the village is number 6. He immediately classifies her as number 6. She asked his name, and he said, "I'm just a person looking to be free." And so he's there in the village by himself. In the meantime, her husband is trying to mount a expedition to the village to try to get the secrets that are there. And also at the same time, what's going on is the person who ran the village was always called number two. He was kind of the main torturer and person trying to break people down. And supposedly he's put out a book about the village now called The Village Idiot, which it turns out was really, he wrote the book, but the guy who's trying to find the island or find the village now has rewritten it all and made it just totally fictional. But number two is trying to get back to the village too. So all these people are heading toward the village, each with their own agenda, except for number six, who's always been there, and this person who crashed there, all to try to break down the last secrets. Number two is going there to finally break down number six. They're all heading there, and I'm going to let you find out how this all plays out because it turns into just a twisty sort of path on everybody heading to this place, each with their own agenda, and you're wondering who in the end will come out on top and whether number six will ever leave village or is staying there forever. And actually, to give you a little bit of at least as I read it, one of the things that because of the shots they give you on like the last page of the comic is, let's see if I can find it here. This picture. Of course, we have Britain there. But throughout, this picture keeps showing up as they show the village, then they'll show London. And I think part of what they're getting at is maybe the whole world is really the village. And we'll all have to make the decision about how we're going to face these forces that are trying to break us down, make us work in the way they want us to. And it also, I think, is a book that plays a lot with what does it mean to be free? Because that's what the former number six keeps saying is all I want is to be free. But other characters will ask, well, but what does that mean to be free? And so we as comic people are asking, it's a good question. What does it mean to be free? So I was glad that we returned to the village at least. You know, it took a while to get back here, but we did. And I actually, in the next review, have the only other return to the village. That's in some ways interesting because it's counter to this storyline that came from DC. This is another one that writers at Titan put out. By the way, this is Dean Motter and Mark Asquith who did this particular version. And I was just happy that finally, even though Marvel dropped the ball, somebody picked it up.
And this is a question I'll often ask anytime any of us from the Crimson Cowl Comic Club brings a property that is either spun out of or based off of something that was either a TV show or a movie. I always ask, how do you think it reads if nobody has any information that this was a TV show? Like if somebody just stumbled upon this, do you think it does a good job of just kind of bringing people in that have zero clue what it is?
The original version that came out from DC probably would be unintelligible to anybody who didn't have some knowledge of what went on in the TV show The Prisoner. When they redid it for Titan, they added some stuff in the front that gave you background before they went into the story. So then you had a little more of a chance to pick up on, okay, what's going on here. But I think it still would be a little tough for someone who had never watched The Prisoner at all. I think these books were primarily written for fans of the show. Though they did release a updated version of The Prisoner in the 80s, I think. It had a slightly different structure to it and stuff, but it was the same idea of this place that somebody finds themselves in suddenly. They're trying to pull information from you, and you have to decide, do you just give in to the forces that are out there trying to mold you and shape you, or do you resist that reality? So there's probably a wider chance people could pick up on it now because they did do that remake in the 80s that gave people another shot at seeing what the village might be all about.
Okay. Good. I'm queuing up a reference for what I'm about to talk about here because my next review was purchased at a very small curated art event in Milwaukee that was run by my friend Megan and her husband. It was an event in Milwaukee called Cryptid and Conspiracy Market, and it sounded like it went pretty well. I was down there for an hour and bought a lot of stuff from all the different vendors, just kind of a first time experience. And I think they already have talks to want to do it more and expand and focus on cryptid type of stories and art creations and such. And that is where I found somebody selling this comic book called Child of Rot. What truly makes a monster? Smog cannot touch anything without killing it. Death and misery follow him wherever he goes. But now a white wolf has started to follow him, and Smog is growing concerned, not for himself, but for the wolf. Why is the wolf following him, and how can Smog keep it from going too close before it's too late? This has art and story by what is credited as OA, as in the letter O hyphen EH. And uh, they are from a collective that I have information from too, so I don't mislead people here. Mod Media Studio, that's MAHD Media Studio, and it is a queer retro indie horror comics, visual novels, video game artists collaborative. So there's a lot of things that's going on at the Mod Media Studio, and the one of the creators that I met there that was, I'm assuming, representing a table of their work, was for Child of Rot. And they had two different comic books here, and I'm talking about one of them. And I figured it's a good time to, going to some of these things. I wasn't sure if it's just going to be an arts and crafts thing, buying stickers and prints and handmade items, which I did and are awesome. So I was excited to see that someone was selling comic books there. So this one is done in, I think it is all in black and white. Yep. We open up and we get into the woods. We're going into like a forest area, and very quickly, after seeing some wildlife, we meet our character Smog, SMOG. And this character is kind of, for those just listening, is kind of like a silhouetted type of character. You see the highlights with white in the eyes and the teeth. So a very kind of creepy image that is very contrast to the surroundings, which seems to be in like daytime. So it really kind of stands out, almost makes it scarier that you have this very deep colored dark character that's just walking around in broad daylight in the woods. And every couple pages we take a step out of the initial illustrations, and I think it's all the same artist, but then we get a full page, like more detailed, like painting. So it's kind of like little, not like a chapter break, but sort of like that. It's just kind of a story beat, if you will. And we get a couple of those pages throughout the story, and it's done. Those are just gorgeous and additional to the regular art. But showing some more of just the art from the story, as we meet some of the characters and we dive into some dream sequences. We've got the character of Smog, who is basically going through, comes across this wolf, as I mentioned in the synopsis, a wolf who's been caught in a bear trap. And our quote unquote monster, who definitely doesn't seem to be a monster according to the dialogue, the inner monologue of the character, is wants to help the wolf, but also knows that if he touches anything or anyone, it's going to be infected and died. So Smog is dealing with the, I want to say the wolf, but if I do that, I have to do this very carefully. The wolf is almost trying to lunge and attack, even though it's being saved, and it just wants to just eliminate all contact, just so that he can try to save a life. And to tease the second half of the story, it shows off an interesting bond between the wolf and Smog and the decisions that are made to try and help. I'll show the bear trap image there coming across the wolf. And yeah, so I think the design of this book is done very, very well. I just love the silhouette look. We do get in some scenes here where more of the trees are in silhouette form as he's kind of breaking down and having certain thoughts. I think I think the art changes with the mood of the character in a way, but ultimately it's just kind of a really good contrast to the other mostly white, line drawings. Um, and I think that's all I really want to say on this. It is done kind of like I would say it's a very satisfying story. It's just a single oversized issue. If I were to guess, I don't know if we're talking 40 pages maybe. Um, they've done some stuff. I'm not sure if this was originally done as a web comic. Oh yeah, here we go. Uh, this story was originally created for a webtoon short story contest back in 2020, back when it was simply called Diary of Smog. And while I, the creator, was nowhere near winning the contest, it was still pretty well received by readers. It took a few years, but I finally managed to update the artwork and put this story into print. So that's cool. It started off as like an online webtoon comic that had some good reception, not for prize winning, but from just readers alike who stumbled upon it and read it for free, and enough to kind of spruce it up and put it out in print and show up at a very small indie cryptid market in Milwaukee that I happened to stumble across. So yeah, it was very enjoyable, and I'm curious to check out some of the other stuff that they do as the collective under that Mod Studio, I think. Yes, MAHD Mod Media Studio. That's over on Instagram, or it's modmediastudio.com for those for direct links. And yeah, so yeah, it was cool. I wasn't going in to expect picking up any comics. I just thought I was just picking up other cool artwork. So it was a fun find to see, and it was one of those just being like, all right, you make comics, all right, I will buy these then, just because it's the only table selling comics. Somebody else I think had like characters with their that was another like webtoon web comic thing, but there was more so selling the merchandise and stickers and promoting to read the comic for free, which I got to go do yet. So maybe I'll return with some more. But
all right, look forward to it.
Ooh, yes, this one I wanted to show because it shows another one of those cool painted images that are just kind of sprinkled throughout the story, just to really see how the detail of that. It looks really good. It's reminding me of something, but I can't quite place it right now. The style, but those watching us on YouTube have seen some of the examples here. But yeah, so that is Child of Rot, and that is by Oe, if I'm pronouncing their name correctly.
Okay.
All right, jumping on to the next one.
Back to the village.
Yes.
Titan Comics then put out after the DC Comics had put out their version of what happened at the village. Titan did their own called the Uncertainty Machine. This actually is kind of an alternative sort of idea to what DC did, which was has the village destroyed and things kind of dark, and this is more what might have happened to someone else who ended up at the village. The back of the comic says, welcome to the village. MI5 agent Breen has been ordered to break into the most secure and secret intelligence location in the world, codenamed the Village, and either rescue or liquidate a fellow agent and lover called Carrie before vital information she carries can be extracted. Subsequently, he awakens to find himself renamed Number 6 and a prisoner of the village and is its mysterious controller known only as Number 2. Now, Number 6 is about to discover that when it comes to the village, nothing is what it seems. And the reality is fluid as he struggles to unwrap the mystery of the village and the secrets behind its true architect. This is written by Peter Milligan and Colin Lorimer. This is an interesting kind of break with, in some ways, the original Prisoner sort of thing, in that we're bringing in new characters now who are shaping this storyline. Takes place supposedly a while after Number 6 was there. And people are trying to break in and find out who's running this place. What's going on? What information do they have? And so they picked this agent, Breen, to go in and find out what's going on. He's in some ways a perfect choice because his partner, Carrie, and he were lovers in their last mission, and she supposedly was killed, but they found out that she's actually in the village. So they're sending him in to find out not only about her, but what the village is all about. His handler has picked him as the perfect person, and the way they're going to get him into the village is they send him into its top secret place with a device that could change the world, so that becomes a tantalizing sort of way for people at the village to want to get the information from him. So he breaks into this complex and then ends up being taken away to the village. Here he is, kind of starting to get the information that the secret information by entering this top secret facility. And then they take him away to the village. He ends up there looking much like the Number 6 from the original show, at least in dress. And they try to break him down. Now, the strange thing that ends up happening is that not only is he in the village, not only is Carrie, the person he worked with, who got captured in the village, but also it ends up that his boss ends up in the village. And there's a constant interaction trying to figure out who's trying to get what from who.
Okay.
They're all somehow, you begin to wonder who's manipulating, who's the manipulator, and what this is all going to lead to in gaining information. And I'm not going to give you any of the details of that, because that's really, I think, the center of this story. And there's a certain, again, everybody comes to these stories differently. But as I read this, I felt, especially having watched the original Prisoner, read some other material and stuff, that what they're asking is, what they're positing is maybe all of us are Number 6. All of us are Number 2. We're all being manipulated by something larger than we are. And how do we deal with this constant shifting character of our allegiances, our understandings? It's a brilliant, in many ways, sort of spy concept that they put into the village. So I enjoyed this a lot. This was, I think, a new take on what the village was all about and how to think about it. And if they could continue to kind of keep this alive, I think that this could keep the idea of the village going. And again, you asked, could somebody who didn't see the original Prisoner at all get this? I think in this one they could, because they tell you at the beginning that they're trying to find out about the village because this is some cooperative of foreign people who are trying to get information from all kinds of different sources and be able to sell that on the open market. So they actually give a definition to what the village is about. And so then the people who are there are trying to figure out, okay, who's behind this? How do we get the information? How do we stop this from happening? Are all parts of what's going on in the story. I think the artwork is very stark most of the time, which is kind of an interesting way to approach this particular story. So I would certainly recommend it to anybody who loved The Prisoner, and I think even people who didn't, could probably get into this at least a little bit. The kind of twisting, turning paths of this particular story. The Prisoner, the Uncertainty Machine.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the writer Peter Milligan, who has done a lot of work over at Marvel with the X-Force/X-Statix.
Mm.
They teamed up with my favorite artists, Michael and Laura Allred. And I know that Mike and Laura Allred are big fans of The Prisoner. And I know a lot of times when they work with people, a lot of times they really mesh with a lot of the writers they're paired with. And I can only imagine that Peter Milligan would be a pretty big Prisoner fan for that to exist.
Uh,
And just because of that connection, because he worked with somebody who I know is a Prisoner fan, so I think that probably helps the story too. That
yep.
there's probably not going to be a lot of people that are just like, "Oh, I've got a Prisoner pitch for you" or something like. It's, with the very minimal comics that are out there, it's probably done by the super fans of
Yeah,
it.
I'm pretty sure that all of the ones that I know of have been done by people who really
Yeah,
have an appreciation for The Prisoner. And in fact, the Marvel one that never took off was a bunch of people who thought this is
yeah.
just great, great show and has a lot to bring to people. And so, yeah, there's a commitment to the story, I think, by all these people.
Yeah. Good, good. Okay, so this show so far, we've had a lot of stuff. Like I've been bringing some independent comics. You're talking about real specific, deep cuts of, science fiction TV shows and comics. So I'm going to keep that theme, talking about characters that nobody has ever really heard or talked of, because it's the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Godzilla. I don't think anyone. I'm gonna finally break the seal here and get these characters out there so people know
All
what.
right, so we all know about them.
The heroes in a half shell are taking on the king of the monsters. Long before the organization was corrupted by the Shredder, the Foot Clan's original purpose was to save Japan from kaiju. Now Godzilla and his fellow monsters have reappeared. Not only is the Foot not prepared to stop them, it would seem Shredder himself is behind the attacks. There's actually a funny moment in the first issue where they're looking on some footage and they zoom in and they see they're like, oh, I think the Shredder's behind us, being like, of course the Shredder's behind us. So yeah, it's always good when it's a shock within the story themselves. So um let's see here. Uh yes, the villainous ninja is attempting to use the kaiju to create a new mutagen, one that would give his henchmen a massive upgrade, and only four mutant teenage turtles stand between these new monsters and total chaos. Watches two of the biggest franchises, oh, I guess they are popular, biggest franchises of all time combine into one thrilling story, and as the characters combine into incredible new forms. Well, it keeps going on, but I'm going to stop it there. This is done by Tim Seeley, Pharaoh Pei, Luis Antonio Delgado, and Brian Kolek, if I pronounce those names correctly. This is a 5-issue limited series. I have the other issues in a pile to read, but I wanted my first issue or my review to reflect on the first issue to kind of sell a story that is out there. It had come out recently, but I was waiting for him to pile up. So I think it's out there either in a paperback or available soon. But this is a review for the first issue to kind of let people know what's going on. I love the Ninja Turtles. I love Godzilla. Anytime there's a crossover with the Ninja Turtles, it always seems to work, whether it be with Batman, the Power Rangers, Stranger Things. Like, they could just really go into, they could do Jay and Silent Bob if they want to, because they're crossing over with all these other characters now too. So anytime the turtles are crossing over, I'm always on board. And Godzilla has really been having a moment, and when I say that, it's probably been 5 years now where Godzilla comics just keep coming out with a lot of cool miniseries and one shots and just a bunch of different directions, so many different art styles and stuff. So it's even more fun when they team up with the Ninja Turtles. And what's really cool about this is that this story is done in a way that it stays within the continuity of the Ninja Turtles. It doesn't conflict with anything that we've ever known about the Turtles, but it introduces some very heavy hitting important lore with the fact that Hamato Yoshi and Oroko Saki of eventually Shredder and Splinter and the comic continuity, the cartoon continuity. This one has that there was a rat, an actual rat, and a different continuity. The rat, the master turns into the rat. Blah blah blah. So whatever version we're dealing with the two humans and a rat in this version, and they're talking about the early days of the Foot Clan and how to manage it, and one of them has the side of good and one of them has the side of evil, talking about their mission, being like, well, I thought the Foot Clan did this, well, I thought the Foot Clan stood for this. And what's interesting is that we find out is that right there on the second page is that the root of the Foot Clan existing is to defend Japan from kaiju. And right there on a double splash page right there is Godzilla, and it really shows the height difference there as he's coming ashore, and you see all of the Foot Clan waiting there on the beach. And what's really cool is that it introduced this lore, and it's not going to make me think differently about any of the other turtle comics or movies or cartoons it's woven in there so perfectly that it makes sense, and at the same time it's something that it's just being like, oh well, now these comics are ruined because now they changed the storyline. Like, it just fits in there, I think, really well. It's a wild addition to kind of canonically make Godzilla part of the continuity of the Ninja Turtles. But I think Tim Seeley found a really brilliant approach to not be like, this is from another universe and another story and this is going to change everything. So anyways, this book is a lot of fun, doesn't waste time to do that origin, but then jump right into a turtle battle, because that was then, but now we're in the present, as the Ninja Turtles are always fighting Bebop and Rocksteady, appears. But Bebop and Rocksteady are trying to obtain a briefcase that contains a device for the Shredder for his master plan, and the Turtles kind of thwart those plans. But as that's happening, they thought they won the day. They're all going to go and relax, and then they find out that all of these kaiju have kind of reemerged in Japan, and they're talking about the lore of how they've kind of gone into hiding, and society has kind of driven them away, and now they're coming out to attack. And Splinter tells the Turtles the tale of the kaiju in Japan. So we get basically a look into all of the classic kaiju from the world with Mothra and everybody, and all of that lore is now brought to the attention to the Turtles as well as the readers, and we see that this attack is happening, and this is all just the first issue. And as they are planning for the Turtles to hop on a private jet that's going to be funded by Channel 6 News from April O'Neil, because she's like, well, I'm going to go report it, so we're gonna do this on the news station's dime. And they're all thinking about this luxury fancy jet that they're going to take. They're like, how big the budget do you think this Channel 6 News has? Like, so it's funny to see that the Turtles are getting ready to just have a luxurious flight to Japan. But what's going to stop them from going to Japan? I say this is one issue of 5, so this is more so just kind of a teaser for the trade paperback, and we already know these other monsters are there. Well, while all those monsters and kaiju are in Japan, there is one more who is made its way over to America just as about when the Turtles were deciding to leave. We have Ghidorah. So Ghidorah there is a big splash page reveal showing up in New York City, and that just kind of a real good ender, knowing that, hey, we have to go to this other country to stop all of the chaos. Well, now it's coming to us. So this was a lot of fun. I'm excited to dive into more. There's something that was teased in the synopsis about what Shredder is up to with the secret case and the connection to kaiju, and how he wants to weaponize it and use them to upgrade his own minions. And there's a word in here, I'm not going to say it because I think it's fun for people to experience this. not only is this a mashup of these franchises, but there's a fun mashup word of this new thing that Shredder is introducing that's going to, play into effect for the issues I have yet to read yet. So I laughed out loud at this crazy word that they assembled together for the sake of the story to kind of connect Godzilla and the Ninja Turtles. You got Shredder, you got Krang, you got all the monster lineup. You get some Casey Jones. What's cool about this too, I'd even mentioned this is all in the first issue, is that a lot
Wow,
of
that's a
times
lot in the first issue.
exactly. Oh, that's why I'm excited for four more that are sitting there because I've already feel like I read the trade paperback. What's really cool about this is that even though it's hitting you with so many characters and not only with the different worlds colliding in one story, but it does an interesting thing to bring in the now the name just blanked from me, but the robot turtle, the mecha turtle.
Oh yeah. Um,
Yeah, the name just kind of fell off from me, but oh yeah, here he goes. Metalhead.
Metalhead, yeah.
So Metalhead is just there in the story. So it's cool that like it just has that character there. And then Mondo Gecko
Oh,
is
also
also in
shows
the
up.
story. So it's cool that because I don't think you see that too often. Because if you're concentrating on just bringing in the franchises together, it makes sense that you're like, all right, let's just stick with the Turtles, Splinter, April, and that's it.
Right.
Sometimes you'll get Casey in there. That makes sense. Everybody knows that, but I can see that they were definitely taking advantage of like, hey, I want to play with, Mondo Gecko. So Mondo Gecko
Yep.
gets to be in the story as well, and I'm crossing the fingers that there's even more that show up in the future issues. But yeah, this
So
is
Mondo Gecko did have his own comic for a while.
that right?
So
Okay,
he was
yeah.
he had a bigger arc than a lot of the group.
Yeah, I think the most while I've read, I think because I have all the ultimate collections of the original Eastman and Laird Ninja Turtles. I got them in oversized hardcovers. I think I have one or two more to read yet to go through the initial run. Um, but a lot of my turtle knowledge came from the cartoons, and so yeah, I don't think I've read those, but now I'm curious. So
Yep.
cool. But yeah, this is a lot of fun, and yeah, I think that's all I can really tease. I think that was enough since it's a 5 issue event that is all out there at the moment and may or may not already be in paperback form. That's where I got the synopsis from. So whether it's on pre order or just right around the corner, or it is already out, I mean, that is available. So that is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Godzilla #1 of 5. All right, we got one more weekly review. What do you got for us?
I hope everyone stays awake for this because I have to put some history here. I did a lot of research on this because I was interested once I got going on it. Back in 1953, DC Comics had a single comic come out about the human target. Have you heard of the human target before? And it didn't really take off. But in 1972, they did do a series of human target stories. They were usually attached as secondary stories in Action Comics, The Brave and the Bold, Batman, Detective Comics. It was like the secondary story. And once in a while, they would mix them in with some of the main characters, but not often. The human target is Christopher Chance, who his job is he takes over the identity of someone who's about to be assassinated and becomes them to draw out the assassins and then stop them. So he is a human target. um, the early comics had him usually catch them, but occasionally kill them. As we move forward in history, he ends up killing them more than anything else once they reveal themselves as the assassins. Um, Through the 70s, from 72 till maybe 80, there are these off and on stories. In 1999, they bring Christopher Chance back in his own 4 issue comic series. He's having trouble. He's assumed so many identities, he can't hardly keep track of who he is anymore. And so he gets an apprentice to take over for him, but that guy has a breakdown. And so Chance has to take up the mantle again, and help this guy out by becoming him, in fact, and forcing him to face his own demons. Then in 2003, we have another 12-issue series that goes on, and we have Christopher Chance taking on various people's identities and again saving them from assassination plots and things. And he is still having this difficulty, more and more difficulty dealing with the fact that taking on all these identities is having him have a tenuous grasp on his own identity. Now he almost has to take people's identities on just to keep his sanity all the time. And so he's continuing to do this. Then there's this strange break. In 2010, we get a different look at Christopher Chance because, any idea why? They started the television show.
Oh, okay.
Human Target. Which was slightly different. In the television show, Christopher Chance doesn't actually take on people's identities. Instead, he has the ability to blend in and watch for assassins in differing environments, and has all kinds of skills to help people, protect people from being killed. And the 4-issue comic version in 2010 basically has the same feel as the show rather than the original Human Target. But in 2019, which is the one I'm going to talk about, we come back to the original concept of the Human Target. Oop, lost my cover there on my Kindle. There we go. Oh,
nope. And again.
These electronic things. There we go. The Human Target.
Ah, yes.
And just to give you the kind of synopsis from the back, actually, this is the first. There are 2 volumes in this 12-issue arc. It says, Christopher Chance has made a living out of being a human target. A man hired to disguise himself as his client to invite would-be assassins to attempt his murder. He's had a remarkable career until his latest case, protecting Lex Luthor when things go sideways. An assassination attempt Chance didn't see coming leaves him vulnerable in trying to solve his own murder. He has 12 days to discover just who in the DC universe hated Luthor enough to want him dead by slow-acting poison. And the prime suspect happens to be the Justice League International. The Human Target is a hard-boiled, gritty story in the vein of classic detective noir. And Tom King and Greg Smallwood are the ones who tell this particular story. It is all the Human Target stuff. There's a certain violence to it. So this is not the comic I would hand my small child to read. But this is really an interesting, I think, take on the whole Human Target thing. Each issue of this starts with a calendar marking off a day. The story starts with him covering for Lex Luthor. He expects that someone's going to come in and try to kill him, and someone does. Well, Chance, as Luthor, is on stage. Someone comes in and tries to shoot him and shoot people in the crowd. Chance stops him, but he finds out that somewhere before he went on stage, someone has slipped him a poison. And he goes to Dr. Midnight, who's kind of the doctor for present Justice League. And he says, well, this is a poison there's no cure for. You have 12 days to live.
Now, I was going to ask, now 12 days, does that mean 12 issues?
Yep, there are 12 issues. Each one covers a day in the movement toward the end of Christopher Chance's life. And Christopher Chance decides he has to find out who did this, and he is going to have his revenge before he dies. And what we are initially find out is that the chemical used to create the poison came from an alternate universe, and the only people who were ever there were members of the Justice League International. And so Christopher Chance immediately starts to seek out the members of Justice League International to find out who is the one who is behind this poisoning. He rapidly finds out that the reason for the poisoning is that Lex Luthor at one time was responsible for the death of Ice, one of the members of the Justice League International, and that there were a lot of people in the Justice League International who were not happy about this, especially Fire and Guy Gardner. Guy was Ice's boyfriend. Fire was Ice's closest friend. As the thing goes on, Ice shows up to try to help Chance. She's heard he's dying of this poison, and she's going to help him find out who it is. So throughout the 12 issues, what you have is basically Chance going to all these different members of the Justice League International and trying to figure out who is it who did this, through grilling them sometimes, through having it out with them sometimes. So who is it? Is it Booster Gold, Blue Beetle, Guy Gardner, Red Rocket, Fire, Batman? Who is it who is actually Ice? Is she the one? Who is the one who slipped him this poison? And what is he going to do to one of these people if he catches them and finds out that? So I'm not going to give you any. There's just something fascinating about this whole story, the way he approaches the search for the person, the way people respond. It becomes apparent that maybe it wasn't just one of them.
Okay.
Maybe a number of them were involved in the process. And we get each issue a day counting down toward the end of his life. And so the question is, does he find out who it is? And what happens at the end of 12 days?
Yeah.
I think this was just a great way to bring back that character of Christopher Chance and introduce it into a different kind of environment than you normally found Christopher Chance in, but still using many of the skills that he has as the human target to unravel this mystery that's now embroiled him in the assassination rather than his client. So I found it a very interesting read.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a cool concept. I like right when you were saying that, and then I threw it in there, being like 12 issues, 12 days. There we
Yep.
go. That's a real cool structure like that. So
Yep. So each issue you have that same calendar with another day crossed off. Moving down, the suspense building. What will he find out? And yeah, give it a read. It's an interesting ride.
good creators behind it too. So I think people wouldn't find too hard of a time to commit to something like that when it's got some credible creators. So.
Well, plus, I think one of the interesting elements of this particular storyline too is we usually don't think of what we call the heroes as now in the place of being the murderer.
Yeah, being suspects and
Yep.
okay, cool. Alrighty. There we go. And yeah, that is going to do it then for the weekly reviews. Always appreciate the all of the extra homework that Dr. Kurtzstad brings to the show, and the way he kind of curates his lineup week by week. And yeah, it's cool to see these experiments, and yeah, keep doing it.
Watch the show too. I did watch one episode of it so far. It's an interesting, different kind of take on what it means to be the human target. I like the original concept better, but it has some interesting elements too. So,
okay. All right, so we are going to dive into our letters page. It is an old segment from the Crimson Cowl Comic Club that we've been recently asked to bring it back, and here we are with the letters page. If you were on a deserted island and could only bring one comic or comic book collection, you may, approach that however you'd like. If you can only bring one with you, what would it be? Let's see here. Since you just did the review, we'll start with mine.
Okay, you do it.
About my answer. The way I worded it there, we talked a little bit off air about what qualifies. Anytime these questions are brought up, you can pretty much interpret it however you need to, and One thing I was thinking of, I'm like, all right, am I bringing a single issue comic book that it's just like I'm just going to keep reading the same 20 pages over and over again? Could you take the advantage of giant collections? Are you looking at graphic novels? Are you looking at story arcs? Whatever fits in the suitcase, as we say. And the one I'm picking up is the a Silver Surfer story, but specifically done by Mike Allred, Laura Allred, and Dan Slott. Now, if you're a longtime listener of the show, you've heard me talk about this time and time again. Now, I have not talked about it in a while, so I'm glad that I can bring it up for, maybe some current listeners. But it truly does fit the question well, because I was thinking, like, all right, I'm going to just bring in a big old random collection of Archie comics and just have goofy stuff that I don't have to think about. But I am curating it to a story that is very important to me, that it, ignited my love or expanded my love for the Silver Surfer character. I've always liked the character, but until I read this very unique take on it, which when it came out, there was definitely people that, if you're longtime surfer fans, that it was too off the wall for them, and the art style maybe it wasn't fitting them. The tone, the story, you know, it's all understandable because it is a wildly different take than what you're used to with all the comics that come before it for Silver Surfer, and even the comics that have come after it. It's a very specific couple of years within the Surfer's history that was done within the universe without it being written away for the next writer to come on or something. Um, and the unique take on this made me really appreciate the Silver Surfer's connection with the human world. Silver Surfer is most of his stories, it's just whether he's trapped on Earth for 10 years or he's out, cruising around the cosmos and doing all that kind of stuff. This one really puts it through the lens of the one of the main characters, Dawn Greenwood, who is a human woman who saw a shooting star when she was a young girl with her twin sister and their dad. They saw a shooting star and they made a wish. And then we find out decades later, or 10, 15, whatever the years were, the math was later, that shooting star was actually the Silver Surfer. So it was a cool way to kind of really bring it to perspective of the Silver Surfer's entry onto Earth and how he interacts with everybody, and the connection that he has based off of that wish on those opening pages. And this story, I don't think there's a comic book that I've turned into an annual read like I have the Silver Surfer. Total, it's like 29 or 30 issues because there's like a one-off special thing that is like thrown into the continuity of the actual storyline. Um, but this is something that every single year I would reread this. I do one issue a day for the in the month of November and reread this series. And I don't think I've ever done that where I've definitely reread comic books I've loved, but I don't think I've made it an appointment of being like, well, it's November, time to reread the Silver Surfer, and that just holds the book extra special to me. It's just a gorgeous book to look at. There's always so much, and it's one collective story, very satisfied. And if I'm stuck on a desert island, presumingly I'm the only person on that island, and try there's ways I could lose my humanity and by not having the connection. And I think a good way to keep that alive is through an alien spaceman who is trying to make those connections with actual human companions himself. And this is my favorite comic book when it comes down to it. This is my favorite story. Might even be, if you look into TV and movies, just story in general. I just love what they did within this very specific time period of 2014 to 2017, I think. But that is the Silver Surfer. They've come out with a second re-release of the omnibus. So it's something that people demanded to be in print again. So it may be more accessible. Otherwise, it's on Marvel Unlimited, I would assume. But that is the Silver Surfer, specifically done by Dan Slott, Michael and Laura Allred. 2 volumes that were wrapped into one giant story. So when it comes to the reading order, you're going to have, 2 number 1s, 2 number 2s, 2 number 3s. But so it's a set of like like a 1 to 15 and a 1 to 14, I think, or something. So in case people are looking for it in single issues, just be aware because our late friend Kirby, when he was, because I was talking about this book so much, he started seeking out the issues, and it can get confusing because you could have a number 4, 5, and 6 right there in your pile, not realizing issue number 5 was from the second volume run. So that's why maybe just pick up the omnibus. And I
Yeah,
trust, I
sounds
trust
reasonable.
I trusted the story so much that with local friends that just like, hey, I think I'll try that. I would say, you know what? I'm going to give you a money back guarantee that if you don't like that story, I'm just going to buy that omnibus from you and take it off your hands and regift it or something. That's how much I believed in the story of just saying, don't spend your time trying to return it to Amazon. I'll just buy it from you if you don't care for it. So that's how much I love a story.
All right.
So your answer.
Huh. I have a more serious answer and a more comedic answer to this question.
Just us two, so feel free to give us
Yeah.
both.
Seriously, I think that probably one of the stories that sticks in my mind so much, and I'm not exactly sure, it just seems like such an intricately and well-written arc. Are all the things leading up to Nightfall, and then all the things about Batman's return after his role is taken over by a somewhat psychotic version of Batman, and has to come back and take the cowl back from him. There's just, the whole lead up to it with all the villains working together, slowly pushing Batman to the very edge and finally breaking him. And then the uncertainty of what we're going to do now that Batman's gone. It seems like um, Dick and the others aren't really up to taking on the role of Batman, so they bring in forget the name of the character, but he's was kind of picked by Batman, who takes this very, we think of Batman as a pretty brutal character as it is, but he takes it a step further. And as Bruce is watching this, he realizes this can't go on. He's got to go back and take the cowl back. But now taking this person on is not going to be easy. And the final solution of how he finally wears this person down, making him slowly strip off the bat armor he's created, so that he can face him in a more direct way, is just, I think, brilliant how they did the whole thing. I think that whole comic arc of things was just so well written. I would definitely go with that as one possibility I would have. On a more comedic level, they did a Deadpool series where it was kind of like choose your own adventure. There was like all kinds of places
Yeah.
within the comic that you would go here. If you go to this place, then go to this panel way over here. That would be fun if you were in a desert island just because you could have
Yeah.
all kinds of new stories all the
That
time.
and that title I think was "You Are Deadpool," a five
Yeah,
issue
you are dead.
series.
Yeah, I think, yeah. So I think you are Deadpool would be fun on an island because it's
Yeah,
not just one story, it's a whole bunch of stories,
that's a
depending
genius
on which
answer. Yeah.
path you take. And there is one other single issue I've always, or actually two other single issues I've always loved, but if taking a single issue of a comic would somehow not, that wouldn't get you very far. But the first issue of Demon Hunter, which was the only issue ever of Demon Hunter,
Oh,
I
okay.
thought was a great comic. And there is a Defenders comic where there is a what the gamesman takes on someone else, and they each have to choose a team, and the one chooses the Defenders plus Daredevil as their team, and just the confrontations that take place in that particular issue of the Defenders is just another really fascinating sort of concept, with each of them taking on individuals who in many ways have the very counter of their own powers, and they have to figure out how then do I defeat this person, and they don't all win.
Okay.
And at the end it turns out a tie, and Daredevil, or they actually, the Defenders lose, But Daredevil comes up with a clever way to save the situation.
Ooh. Yeah, I appreciate those answers, especially, with the thinking about the Deadpool thing. Like, it is a genius take on it, just being like, hey, you get more than just the one story. You can, yeah, have multiple. And I'm thinking, like, I think at the time of this recording, they're getting close to 1,000 issues of the Amazing Spider-Man, I believe. Now, while they would never come out with an 1,000 issue omnibus, but if they ever did,
That, of course, it
imagine
wouldn't
just,
fit in your suitcase
yeah,
either.
it might be big enough to sleep on, you could have multi-purposes, but if it's big enough too, if it's an oversized one, you can use the pages to cover yourself up at night. But I think there's many ways to approach it. Now, before I forget, our friend David Gloyd,
Just going to ask.
yep, Crimson Cold Media. David was unable to join us today, but he knew the question. He sent me an answer, which I didn't read ahead of time. So this is going to be his answer to the letters page question on what comic book or comic books series he would bring on a desert island. And I didn't read it yet, but let's just see if it's Superman by chance. It's a tough one. I don't think I could make it with one book, but I think I could choose a collection. While Superman might be my favorite superhero, I would choose the collection that has been there since my first comic book, and for many of the same reasons I started my comic book collection with that book. I am, of course, talking about the X-Men. When I started collecting as a teenager, I could only afford to collect one book. I chose the X-Men for its complex, colorful, and varied cast of characters. So yeah, if I could only have one collection, it would be the one that started it all for me, even if I had to strip it down to just one original Uncanny X-Men title. Now, I know David has talked about that in the past of like getting excited to pick up like Avengers books or Justice League books because hey, you get multiple characters and if rather than just buying Thor's book and Captain America's book and Iron Man's book and blah blah blah, getting those team books much like X-Men, you're getting more for the value of your money and that makes sense if you're on a desert island of getting the multiple characters and the
Good
multiple
choice.
storylines within the characters and stuff too. But yeah, so he threw a curveball. I predicted Superman, but that made sense that he went back to his original and yeah. So there it is. They're good.
All right.
So yeah, that is the answer for the letters page this time. I think we'll stick to doing that once a month for the 2 episodes that we do. We'll do one of those episodes, and it's fun to kind of revisit that for a conversation. And it's great for some extra filler when there's only 2 of us here on this episode. We had some extra discussion, but we had some great issues, had some great reviews, as well as the letters page. And we'll do some quick plugs. This episode will come out after the fact, but I was at Oh Yeah Comics for Free Comic Book Day. I'll talk more about that when I've had the actual experience, because I will have been coming back from purchasing Oh Yeah Comics number 16, which had my first ever pinup for Oh Yeah Comics in that comic book. So that is a dream come true. That's something that ignited my comic creation, my self-publishing, all because I made that fan art that Art Baltasar said, hey, we're going to put that in a future Oh Yeah Comics issue. And now it's a thing that is, at the time of this recording, isn't, but when people see this, it's out there. So reach out to Oh Yeah Comic Shops or just go to artbaltazar.com, and by that time he should have it on the website after its initial debut at Free Comic Book Day. So it's exciting to have that out in the world. Cool. All right, so that is going to do it. Our normal plugs, super quick, crimsoncowlcomics.com for info on original webcomics and ways to purchase the physical comics if you can't make it out to a show. Crimson Cowl Comic Club on YouTube, as well as iTunes. Subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend to help the show grow. I have all of my art over on my art accounts, Anthony Laatsch, Laatsch, over on Instagram and Facebook. I am the co-host of Cartoonist by Night alongside my cartoonist friends. We have over 75 episodes out there, so many that we keep putting out there. We just recorded a pre-Free Comic Book Day kind of preview for myself and my friend Brian Lynch, who will be setting up at All Yeah Comics. That episode will already be out at this time, so check that out. And we have a lot of stuff planned for the upcoming year. A drawing show for all of you to watch. Cartoonist by Night on YouTube. And looking at the other links, that covers me. And then our late friend Kirby has Under the Cowl of MS. I want to continue to promote checking out his channel that he left behind for us to hear so many hours of stories of his life, as well as his collection of art and comic books and reviews and all of that fun stuff over at Under the Cowl of MS. And that is going to do it for this episode. Even though it was just a two-person team, it was still a great discussion, and always great to talk comic books and get those deep dive history lessons and stuff. And it's a great addition to the show here. So always fun to do it. This whole time, I've been sitting around in my living room in costume.
And this whole time, I've been Christopher Chance covering for Dave or Dr. Kurt's dad so he doesn't get assassinated.
To be continued.
Everybody take care, and we will talk to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.